The temple was behind him. And now, fading into the mist like a dream with teeth, Kishil descended. His horse walked, but Kale's thoughts galloped. On his chest clinked a dozen medallions, on his shoulder dried blood, and Kyle walked without knowing how far, or for how long. Days blended, nights unraveled. And once in the kingdom of Aruval, the king commissioned two statues, one made of iron, the other of clay. A mirror, obsidian like the sage's bowl, shimmered in the ground, but this one bled light, and in its reflection, from the shadows behind the altar, another figure stepped forward. The desert wind blew, not with fury, but with memory. Evening fell, like a dying ember over the crimson sands of Elerith. The sky, a tapestry of purple and burnt orange, stretched wide as though it too sighed after the battle's end. Beneath it rode Kyle, son of no one, named by the sword and carried by the chants of men who called him invincible. He was wrapped in quiet applause. The villagers did not scream. They whispered his name like it was sacred. They dropped flowers at his feet, though he never stopped for them. His horse walked, but Kale's thoughts galloped. On his chest clinked a dozen medallions, on his shoulder dried blood, and in his hand a small tarnished coin, worn smooth at the edges, marked with the old emblem of the brotherhood he once swore loyalty to. Before the day his brother vanished into smoke, Kale ran his thumb across its face. Once this coin had meant trust. Now it was a wound he carried in his palm. He entered his tent not as a hero, but as a man escaping sound. There, under a low-burning lantern, he removed his armor slowly, each piece heavier than the last. His back curved like an old tree, burdened with years of storm. He looked to the corner of the room, where his sword leaned against a wooden post. The Grey Fang, forged from the spine of a fallen mountain, it had never broken, neither had he, and yet there was a crack in him tonight. He sat down on a low chair carved from a single block of stone, one his brother had made for him years ago. The chair had once been a symbol of pride, a throne of sorts. Now, it was simply cold stone. He clutched the coin as if it might whisper back the voice he'd not heard in years. "You can't break what never bends," he murmured to himself, repeating the old warrior's creed. But the words felt sour. A breeze stirred the tent flaps. It carried the scent of sagebrush and firewood, and with it, something else, a voice, faint, almost like breath. "The stone that cannot break will drown in its own weight." Kyle stood quickly, his fingers tightened on the hilt of the sword. No, or nothing, just wind, but the words settled inside him like seeds. That night, sleep did not come. The coin remained in his palm, hot with guilt. Kale's eyes stayed open, locked on the shadow that danced just beyond his fire. In it, he thought he saw a figure, blindfolded, sitting by an unseen well. He blinked, and it was gone. At dawn, Kale rose and did something he had not done in years. He left without armor, without sword, only the coin in his pocket and the burden in his chest. He walked toward the horizon, where the sun melted into sand, led not by orders or purpose, but by a feeling he could not name. Somewhere beyond the dunes stood the temple, of forgotten echoes, long lost to maps, remembered only in stories whispered around fires. They said a blind sage lived there, a man who once fought like Kale, and then chose to forget his name. Kyle did not believe in prophecy, but the coin in his hand grew heavier with every step. And far behind him, the sword remained untouched. The man who had never been broken was about to meet the one thing stronger than pride, remembrance. The sands whispered with every footfall, as if the land itself remembered stories long buried beneath its golden skin. Kyle walked without knowing how far, or for how long. Days blended, nights unraveled, and still the coin burned in his pocket like a buried curse. By the third dusk, the sky cracked open in a storm, but not of rain, of silence. He found it then, the temple of forgotten echoes. It was no grand fortress, no shining pillar, just a circular ruin carved into the belly of a broken cliff, half-sunken, moss-covered, wind-worn, and waiting within, seated before a dry, lifeless well, was the blind sage. He did not rise, did not turn, simply sat, hooded and still, with a large obsidian bowl in his lap. Kyle paused. "You knew I was coming," he said. "No," the sage replied, his voice calm as stone in water. "But something else did." Kyle approached, unsettled. "You're the one they speak of, the warrior who turned his back on battle?" "I turned my face to the truth," the sage said, "not my back to the blade." Kyle scoffed. "I've heard riddles before." "And yet you carry one," the sage said, tilting his head toward Kale's pocket. Kale stiffened. He drew the coin and held it up. "This? It's just a memory of a promise broken." "Then why do you still carry it?" Kale was silent. The sage gestured to the obsidian bowl in his lap. "Drop it in," Kale frowned. "What? If it is only memory and not a wound, drop it in. Let it vanish." Kyle stepped forward, slowly. His hand hovered above the bowl, but he couldn't let go. His fingers clenched the coin tighter, like it might fall from him into nothingness if he even blinked. "I thought so," the sage whispered. "You do not carry a coin. You carry your brother." Kyle stepped back, his face hardening. "I came for answers, not games." "No," the sage said. "You came because you feel yourself slipping, because the armor you wear inside you is cracking, because no man wins so many battles without losing something of himself." A beat of stillness. The wind howled outside. Then the sage turned his blind eyes to Kale. "Let me tell you a tale, the parable of the two statues. Once in the kingdom of Aruval, the king commissioned two statues, one made of iron, the other of clay. Both stood at the palace gates. The iron statue stood proud, unmoved by time or storm. Soldiers bowed to it. Children feared it. It became legend. The clay statue, it cracked under rain. Its edges softened. Birds nested in its hollows. People mocked it, even pitied it. But when the kingdom fell to fire and war, and the gates were crushed by invaders, only one statue remained, the clay one. For while the iron statue shattered under pressure, the clay one, flawed and broken, had grown roots beneath it. Moss, soil, even worms had become part of it. What had once been weakness became foundation. The sage looked up. "Now, Kyle, tell me, which are you?" Kyle stood in stunned silence. He looked down at his calloused hands, at the coin in them. For years he had forged himself to be iron, unbending, undefeated. But in doing so, had he denied the cracks that made him human? "Why did the iron break?" Kale asked, his voice quieter. "Because it refused to bend," the sage said. "It mistook pride for strength. It forgot the most sacred truth. Even stone must kneel to water." Kyle's lips trembled. "And the coin?" "It will only stop hurting," the sage whispered, "when you understand what it truly buys." Outside, a sudden gust scattered sand through the temple's doorway. Kyle turned to look, and in that moment the sage rose for the first time. "Come," he said, walking slowly toward a cracked mirror standing beside the dry well. It was ancient, dust-covered, its reflection warped and fractured. The sage stood beside it. "Look." Kyle stepped forward, gazed into the mirror. He expected to see himself. He did not. He saw his brother, eyes calm, face still, holding out something, the same coin. Kyle gasped, stepping back. "What is this?" The sage's voice was barely a whisper now. "Memory is not a chain, Kyle. It is a compass. You carry him because you think you failed him. But perhaps you only failed to listen." A silence. Then the sage turned his sightless eyes to Kale. "If you want truth, seek the place where your brother was last seen, where the fire took him. The truth is there, but so is the shadow that feeds on your guilt. And as Kyle turned to leave, the sage whispered one final thing. Remember, not all who are lost want to be found. The temple was behind him, and now, fading into the mist like a dream with teeth, Gishil descended from the cliffs with a heart heavier than his blade. The sage's words haunted him. The coin felt colder, and for the first time in years, the path ahead wasn't a mission, it was a reckoning. He returned to the last place his brother was seen, the Black Hollow Pass, a ravine scarred by war and wildfires. It was here, 5 years ago, that Kyle had led his battalion through flame and lost Lior, his younger brother, in the chaos, or so he believed. As night fell, the air grew strange. Kyle lit no fire. He simply waited, seated among the ashes of the past, listening to the wind whistle through the burnt trees. That's when he heard it. Laughter, soft, childlike. He stood, hand on sword. "Who's there?" The laughter faded into whispers until a figure stepped into view just beyond the trees, a boy, no older than 10, barefoot, pale, eyes glowing faintly gold. "Are you him?" the boy asked. "The one who left someone behind?" Kyle blinked. "What did you say?" The boy pointed to Kyle's chest. "You forgot something when the fire came. It's still burning." Then the boy turned, motioning for Kyle to follow. And Kyle, against all sense, all reason, did. They walked deeper into the hollow, to a place Kyle didn't recognize, yet somehow remembered. There was a stone altar, blackened and cracked. Around it, twisted symbols carved into the earth. A ritual site? No. Something older. Something forbidden. The boy turned to him. "Your brother didn't burn," he said. Kyle's heart stopped. What do you mean?" The boy tilted his head. "You saw flames. But did you see a body?" Kyle opened his mouth, then closed it. No, he never saw. Lior's body, just smoke, screams, a flash of light, then silence. "You assumed fire took him," the boy whispered. "Oh, but it wasn't fire, it was you." Kyle stumbled back. No, I tried to save him." "You tried," the boy said, stepping closer. "But when the moment came, you hesitated." Images slammed into Kyle's mind, memory colliding with truth. The flames rising, his brother shouting, Kyle reaching out and then turning away to save another soldier. He left Lior. He chose someone else. The earth beneath the altar cracked open. A mirror, obsidian like the sage's bowl, shimmered in the ground, but this one bled light, and in its reflection, Kyle didn't see himself. He saw two Kyles, one, the soldier, scarred and noble, the other, a twisted echo, dark-eyed, smirking and cloaked in smoke. The boy stood between them. There are always two of you, the one who acts and the one who hides behind reasons. Kyle fell to his knees. I didn't know. I didn't mean. You didn't need to kill him, the boy whispered. You only needed to abandon him. The rest he did on his own. Kyle looked up, his voice shaking. What do you mean? The boy's voice changed, older now, familiar. He waited, Kyle, in that hollow, for 3 days. He screamed until his voice broke, and when no one came, he gave himself to something else. From the shadows behind the altar, another figure stepped forward, a man, tall, cloaked in smoke and flame. His face, Kyle's face, but younger, harder. His eyes glowed gold. You left me, the figure said, his voice like embers cracking in wood. So I became what the world left behind. Kyle stood, shaken. Lior. The figure did not smile. I was Lior once, before I burned, before I realized some names are meant to be forgotten. Kyle's eyes filled with tears. I thought you were dead. Lior stepped closer. I was. The day you turned your back. But death, it made me see. See what? That heroes are made by choice and monsters by betrayal. Kyle stepped back. I didn't betray you. You didn't have to, Lior growled. You just had to choose something else. And now you have one last choice to make. He reached out, and in his palm, a second coin, identical to Cale's, flipping in the air, burning red. Lior whispered, "One coin buys peace, the other vengeance." He tossed them both to the ground. "Choose wisely, brother," and then vanished in smoke. Cale knelt before the two coins, heart racing, hands trembling, and for the first time, he wasn't sure which one was his. Silence. Only. The wind spoke, whistling through the hollow, stirring the ash into tiny spirals that danced around the two coins at Cale's feet. One gleamed silver, cool, clean, peaceful. The other flickered red, restless, pulsing like a wound that refused to close. Cale didn't move. He was still kneeling, still frozen, still not ready to know the answer he feared. Cale picked up the silver coin. It felt light, too light. It didn't hum. It didn't whisper. It didn't accuse him. But when he turned it over, he saw something etched on the back that hadn't been there before. "Mercy buys silence, but silence keeps the dead screaming." He dropped it. Heart racing, he grabbed the red coin. This one pulsed like a second heartbeat, warm, heavy, too heavy. He turned it over. Etched in crimson, it read, "Vengeance burns bright, but consumes the hand that holds it." His fists clenched. He stood between them, one coin whispering of peace, the other of fire. And still, neither offered what he truly wanted. Answers. The wind shifted again, and the hollow changed. The trees stood taller now, alive. The ash receded like breath sucked back into lungs, and the altar cracked no longer. In its place, a temple, the temple of regret, but not as Cale had seen it. This one was whole, unburned, and Leo stood at its gates, not cloaked in fire, not smirking, just standing, watching. Kyle stepped forward. "Is this real?" Leo's voice was gentle. "No, but neither was the fire that took me." Kyle didn't understand. "Then where are you?" "Exactly where you left me, between memory and guilt." Leo took a step closer. "Do you really want to know what happened to me?" Kyle hesitated. "Yes." Leo's smile faded. "Then follow me." He turned and walked into the temple, and Kyle, carrying both coins, followed. Inside the temple, a long hallway of mirrors. Each one showed a different version of Kyle. In one, he chose peace. He knelt, mourned, and let Leo go. In another, he hunted down everyone responsible for the fire, became a killer, and lost himself. And in one mirror, Kyle froze. He saw himself, wearing Leo's armor, eyes gold, heart blackened, a warlord, a tyrant. Leo stood beside him. "This is the version of you that chooses neither coin, but takes mine instead." Kyle looked at him. "You're saying you want me to become you?" "No," Leo said softly. "I want you to understand why I did." Leo raised his hand. A flicker of flame danced above his palm, then took shape, a memory, a vision. Leo in the hollow, alone, bleeding, crying, waiting. Days passed. No one came until something else did. A voice, ancient, gentle and hollow as a tomb. It offered him warmth, strength, a second chance. All it asked was his name. Kyle watched as Leo, half mad with pain and grief, whispered his name into the dark. And it was taken, not stolen, given. Leo turned to Cale, eyes shimmering. "I didn't die in the fire. I died in the silence that followed." Cale turned, ready to speak, but the mirrors were gone. The temple faded, and now he stood alone, back in the hollow. The two coins at his feet again, but this time there was a third coin, smaller, jet black. No markings, no light, just waiting. Kyle bent down, staring at it. He didn't pick it up, not yet. Because this one didn't offer peace or vengeance. It offered something else, something unknown. And Kyle knew once this coin was flipped, there'd be no going back. 3 choices, 1 soul. and only one truth beneath them all. Some regrets don't ask for forgiveness, they ask for a crown. The 3 coins lay in the dust like gods waiting to be worshipped. Silver for mercy, red for vengeance, black for the unknown. Kyle stood over them, heart pounding like a war drum in his chest. The hollow was quiet again, too quiet. Even the wind had stopped, like the world itself was holding its breath. He didn't want to touch the black coin. It had no markings, no promise, no warning. But that was the very thing that made it more terrifying than the others. Kyle knelt, and without thinking, he placed a hand over it. Suddenly, the world shattered. He stood in darkness, not shadow, but absence. No sky, no floor, just void. And in front of him a throne, empty, cracked, ancient, its edges burned, its seat frozen, its arms bleeding light and smoke. And beside it stood Leor, but older, wiser, weathered by centuries. Kyle stepped forward. What is this? A place? Leor turned, voice softer now. The place where kings are made, or undone. Kyle looked down. In his hand now, not a coin, but a crown, forged of bone, ash, and fire. No, Kel whispered. I didn't choose this. But you did, Leor replied. You just didn't know what you were choosing. Leor raised a hand and the truth was shown. The fire that killed their village, it wasn't set by invaders. It wasn't sabotage. It was a spark born from Kale himself. A moment of anger, long forgotten. A magical surge, uncontrolled. A cry to be seen, a desire to stop being the shadow of his brother. He'd buried it, the guilt, the memory. His mind rewrote it. But the fire remembered. Kale fell to his knees. No, that's not possible. I couldn't. You didn't. I mean to, Leor said gently. But regret doesn't care about intention, only consequence. Kyle clutched the crown in his trembling hands. The throne pulsed, alive, sensing his agony. It did not ask for power, it asked for ownership, not of kingdoms, but of truth. Sit, Leor said. If you dare. Kyle stepped forward. Each step burned his feet. Each breath tasted of smoke and blood and betrayal. He sat. The throne screamed. The world shook. And the crown melted, not into gold, but into light. And it crawled into Kyle's skin, marking him, remaking him. When Kyle opened his eyes again, he wasn't in the throne room. He wasn't in the hollow. He was in the ashes of his village. But it was no longer ruins. The temple stood rebuilt. Children laughed in the distance. Stream flowed beside the road. He looked down at his hands, no longer scarred, no longer shaking, but marked with the symbol of the black coin, a spiral, the sign of acceptance without erasure. Leor appeared one final time, no longer a ghost, just a memory, smiling. Did I fix it? Kale asked. Leor shook his head. No, you carried it. That's enough. Kale blinked, and Leor was gone. Not every regret is meant to be undone. Some live with us, sleep beside us, eat with us. But when we stop running, they stop haunting and begin teaching. Kale never chose peace. He never chose vengeance. He chose the third path, the one we all fear, the path of owning who we were, so we can become who we must be. Some crowns aren't worn, they're earned, in silence, in suffering, and in the stories we dare to face. So, if you stood at the edge of your story, crown in hand and pass behind you, what would you choose to carry forward? Let your voice echo in the comments. And if this tale stirred something in you, like, share it with a kindred soul, and subscribe for the next story that might just change your life.